Now, on April 11th, Julian Assange was taken out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London. She is the only Democratic candidate that is calling for the release of Julian Assange because it is a true threat to the freedom of the press. And how can we have a true, free, and democratic society if people who are going to report the news or show corruption are going to be arrested and put in jail or tortured? The videos that I have in front of you are going to show Tulsi Gabbard and her defense of Julian Assange before his arrest, as well as after his arrest.
Some feel that Julian Assange is being persecuted. Do you believe that?
Well, I think there's a few different examples of people who are whistleblowers who have brought forward information about how, for example, government agencies, intelligence agencies have overreach into our private information, this mass surveillance without a warrant.
Now, from that video, you can see right there the concerns that we should all be discussing about the surveillance state that is in the United States. Because when we use social media, such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of our comments, all of our thoughts, anything we post is basically being observed. And where's our protection? Where's our privacy? Whistleblowers like Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning and numerous others are showing us that our private information is being shared. I mean, and we're just only scratching the surface. So as we continue watching this interview, Tulsi Gabbard goes into details about why Julian Assange should not be persecuted.
These are things that a lot of us had no idea were happening until they were exposed. This gave us the opportunity, especially as members of Congress, to do something about it, to try to put those protections in place, to try to reform our laws that allowed for this abuse, many of which were opened up because of the Patriot Act.
Now that right there is important because all of this started with the Patriot Act, which was done under the Bush administration and was continued on through the Obama administration. And now, of course, it's being continued on with the Trump administration. Our private information is being shared due to the fact that we have a strong surveillance state that has been continuously being supported by both Republican and Democratic establishment leaders. And so anyone who's going to call out that corruption or show this corruption is a threat to their system and a threat to their control. So it's rare that we actually hear any elected official really call out the corruption and call out the hypocrisy of our surveillance state.
Well, another example is Chelsea Manning, who just recently was jailed again. Do you think that Chelsea Manning is one of these whistleblowers who has been vindicated and that shouldn't be suffering anymore? I mean, I know President Obama gave her a pardon. What are your thoughts on her being jailed again?
Yeah, she shouldn't be.
Keyword right there, Chelsea Manning shouldn't be in jail. She shouldn't be persecuted. And she was pardoned under Barack Obama. The very fact that Chelsea Manning is in jail again tells us that the surveillance state and the establishment want to keep whistleblowers silent. And I only can imagine what they're currently doing to Julian Assange right now because they had to drag him out of that Ecuadorian embassy on April 11th, 2019.
So just what's your stance on Edward Snowden?
Yeah, like I said, prosecution of whistleblowers who are bringing forward information about how the government is violating our constitutional rights need to have protections in place and not prosecuted and treated like criminals.
And that should show all of you that Tulsi Gabbard is consistent on protecting whistleblowers, from Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and finally Julian Assange. Those three individuals showed how deep our corruption is in the United States and the power of the surveillance state. And we need to protect individuals like that are going to have the courage to step up and say there's something wrong and there must be accountability. This is a tweet from Tulsi Gabbard. The arrest of Julian Assange is meant to send a message to all Americans and journalists. Be quiet, behave, toe the line, or you will pay the price. We need to protect the force of state, we need to protect journalists, and we need to step up to protect Julian Assange and really call all our elected officials to protect him and not have him extradited here to the United States. He didn't do anything wrong. All he did was just publish information that was given to him by whistleblowers that were calling out the corruption, by whistleblowers that saw something wrong and felt that it was in their right to do something. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And if the media, independent media, turns a blind eye to what's happening to Julian Assange, it's only going to happen to the next person and to the next independent media outlet or to the next establishment media outlet. No one will be safe. So being no stranger to going on to corporate media, Tulsi Gabbard went on CNN with Jake Tapper to really discuss the consequences and repercussions of Julian Assange basically being dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
So you served 2 tours of duty in the Middle East. You're currently a major in the Army National Guard. Assange, along with Chelsea Manning, spread classified information that prosecutors at Manning's trial claimed could have brought harm to U.S. service members in Iraq and Afghanistan. Do you agree with that? And what do you think about Assange's extradition and prosecution in the U.S.?
Look, over time, there hasn't been any proof that that has been brought to bore. And what we have seen is that so much of the information that's been released has...
Isn't that fantastic? Where Tulsi Gabbard actually tells the truth to the establishment media. First, you have the establishment media running the propaganda that what Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning did by releasing that information was supposedly a danger to U.S. interests and to military service members. Tulsi Gabbard basically states that that has not been proven, and yet the establishment media continues to run that narrative. Just like for 2.5 years, they were running the narrative of Russiagate. It goes to show you that the establishment media will only cover stories that they feel like they have control over. But when someone like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning actually step up and give information out to the public, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, they turn a blind eye to it because, one, it's a threat to their bread and butter because they have close relations with the establishment and the top 1%.
I've seen is that so much of the information that's been released has informed the American people about actions that were taking place that they should be aware of. It provided transparency around issues both related to civil liberties as well as actions that our military was taking in the Middle East that they should not have been. So really, I think what's happening here is unfortunately, it is some form of retaliation coming from the government saying, hey, this is what happens when you release information that we don't want you to release. And I think that's why this is such a dangerous and slippery slope, not only for journalists, not only for those in the media, but also for every American, that our government can and has the power to kind of lay down the hammer to say, be careful, be quiet, and fall in line. Otherwise, we have the means to be able to come after you.
So you don't think that he should have been extradited, and you don't support his prosecution in the U.S.?
I think the charges about hacking, look, those can and should be worked out in the court of law. My point is that I think there's a bigger issue at play here. There's a reason why the Obama administration chose not to extradite and prosecute Assange because they understood the danger. They understood the danger of the government coming in and controlling essentially what information is and is not being released. We can go back to the release of the Pentagon Papers.
And that right there is important because we need to remember that we wouldn't be seeing this kind of action were it not for the media continuously harassing President Trump on his ties to Russia. And because Julian Assange has been also quote unquote tied to Russia, going to be mercilessly attacked by the media. And Trump, of course, right now, since it's been proven that he has no ties with Russia and that Russia did not rig the election during the 2016 presidential election cycle, I could see this administration, specifically Trump, targeting Julian Assange and making sure he faces trial, all because he wants to prove a point. And no one in the media, especially at CNN or MSNBC, is really going to see the real danger to this because now that Trump can do this, now that he has the power to do this, anyone in the media is fair game.
Is and is not being released. We can go back to the release of the Pentagon Papers as an example. We can look to how the American people have benefited from some of this information being released. So I think we've got to look at it within this larger context here and make sure that we understand what's at stake and actually the danger of what happens when we have people in government, whether it's this administration or a future administration, basically saying, "Hey, look, we can call WikiLeaks a foreign intelligence agency. We can designate an individual as a foreign asset or this or that simply because they don't like the information that's being published or they don't like the things that you're saying."
As you noted, he's not being charged with publishing information the government didn't like or classified information. He's being charged with an attempted hack on the U.S. government. But I want to ask about something you said in your first answer, which was that you thought that there was transparency in the documents provided by Chelsea Manning and published by WikiLeaks and Julian Assange that you thought was healthy. Can you be more specific? What's something that you think the WikiLeaks documents revealed that you think was helpful? Obviously, in 2016, you notably resigned from the DNC. You were vice chair when there were documents that were released suggesting that there were very hostile forces against Bernie Sanders within the DNC. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about something relating to Iraq and Afghanistan, or both?
And I'm actually talking about some of the things that were released regarding the NSA and overreach into our privacy, our Fourth Amendment rights being violated because of some of the practices of the NSA and gathering sweeping data on on all of us, on Americans across this country, whether it's about, the phone calls that we make or other things. These are things that even I, as a member of Congress, were not aware was happening until this information was released. And as a result of that, I and others in Congress have been able to take action to protect our privacy, to protect our civil liberties, and try to shut down these avenues that some of our intelligence agencies have abused and violated our constitutional Fourth Amendment rights.
So the Edward Snowden documents is more what you're referring to, I think. Yes?
Right. I mean, exactly. But this is the overarching issue that I'm talking about.
So we're not going to continue on with the rest of that video. It just goes into Jake Tapper basically asking Tulsi Gabbard how she got 65,000 individual donors so that she could be on the debate stage. To me, it looks like Jake Tapper might have got a message from the producers at CNN basically telling him to switch the subject. But I want everyone to remember that Tulsi Gabbard is calling out the clear corruption and power, or the overpower, of NSA and the surveillance state that we have in this country. This means that in a country of 350 million Americans, the average individual voters, no matter what your political beliefs are, we want to have a free and fair and open press that's going to give us the news, give us information, and hold those in power accountable. If someone like Julian Assange can be arrested, we lose our freedoms. If someone like Chelsea Manning, who was who had her sentence commuted, can once again be put back in jail. Anyone who wants to be a whistleblower can go behind bars. And if someone like Edward Snowden, who is now in Russia, of all places, just because he shared information of corruption and the power of the surveillance state, this should cause a united coalition of Americans to really call out to stopping the harassment of journalists. We need to protect Julian Assange, because if he's next, we're all next. And this goes first beyond journalism. This goes for every single American that's going to want to call out the corruption of their elected officials or those in power. That's not a free society. And if we allow this to happen, we lose who we are as a people. And we can't afford that. And this is a huge shout out again to Tulsi Gabbard, who, as it currently stands right now, is the only Democratic candidate that is calling why he shouldn't be arrested in the first place, because there's a lot more issues to this. So she stands out as being a very strong progressive, and she's probably going to get a lot of negative articles about her already. I could see the headlines already thanks to corporate media. I mean, they've already been trying to tarnish her career already. But at least she's leading the front, and this is what leaders do, especially in challenging times, dealing with this neoliberal system and with this neoliberal media that we have. And this should be a political issue that all the Democratic candidates should be running on. Senator Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, Beto O'Rourke, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren. They should all be calling for the release of Julian Assange. Because if there isn't a united coalition, if there isn't a single coalition that's calling for his release, we might lose the press. And that's a terrible thing. This is Kit with Hard Lens Media, and this is Perspectives. If you like Hard Lens Media and what we do, we have a Patreon page. That support allows us to build a better show for you guys. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you can't do all that, just please make sure you're subscribed and hit that ring bell notification. Peace, everyone, and let's all do what we can to build a better future.